after the Super Bowl, it's a really interesting time of the offseason because you have new head coaches who have just gotten hired, and then you have the franchise tag discussion. Which players and teams aren't going to be able to come to an agreement on a long-term deal? Who's going to need a little bit more time to work things out? And the franchise tag period begins February 20th and it ends March 5th. So this is the time where teams have to figure out who are they going to put that franchise tag on and try to work out a long-term deal with, and which of their star players are going to end up leaving in free agency. And I got some franchise tag predictions for you guys who I think is going to end up getting the franchise tag. And we got to begin with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You may want it to be Mike Evans. Some say Antoine Winfield, but I don't see how the Buccaneers don't put the franchise tag on Baker Mayfield. He may not be an elite quarterback, but he was a really good quarterback this season. And Dave Canales is gone, but as long as they still have a good team around Baker Mayfield, they should be able to find a way to give him a long-term deal that should be a fairly reasonable contract. He shouldn't be getting anywhere more than $27 to $29 million, maybe 30 max. But for right now, you may not be able to come to an agreement with Baker Mayfield just because of you having these situations with Antoine Winfield and Mike Evans. So you might as well just go ahead, put the franchise tag on Baker Mayfield because you can't afford to let him walk in free agency, because then other teams are going to be able to outbid you. At least with the franchise tag, you could work out a little bit more of some situations that will free up your cap space a little bit more to give Baker Mayfield that long-term extension. And then maybe you can find a way to keep Mike Evans and focus on prioritizing him, and you can just get Baker Mayfield right later, because Mike Evans is probably a top 5 Tampa Bay Buccaneer player of all time. And you got to take care of the brother. The brother has been loyal to you. He's taken pay cuts. He's restructured his deal. And now it's time for him to get back what he's not been getting in the past, sacrificing for this franchise. But on the other end is a business. Mike Evans is on the other end of 30, and he could start to regress at any year. There's no date on Father Time. When it hits you out of nowhere, and you never see it coming. But Baker Mayfield, if you can't get a long-term deal worked out with him, you got to give him the franchise tag, because he's a really good option out there. Kirk Cousins is coming off a really concerning injury that ended his season last year, and we don't really know how that injury is going to impact him with how old he is. Therefore, Baker Mayfield would be the best option out there. He's young, has a lot of juice in the tank. He's coming off a really good season. And if you get Baker Mayfield a good supporting cast and a good play caller, like a team such as Denver with Sean Payton, or hell, even the New England Patriots, if they have a good offensive coordinator and they improve their supporting cast, Baker Mayfield could win you some games and you possibly could contend. But you see, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in a situation where they have to worry about Mike Evans, Antoine Winfield, and you can't afford to franchise tag one of those guys and just to let Baker Mayfield walk out the door and test free agency, because I don't think he's going to end up coming back, because there are so many teams that are going to be throwing a lot of money at him because he's a really good quarterback in the right situation. And there are teams that are probably going to be willing to overpay for a guy like Baker Mayfield with how limited of options there are at quarterback in this year's free agency pool. So Baker Mayfield, I don't see how he doesn't get the franchise tag. Now, if they can find a way to get him locked up for the next couple of years, then I expect that they probably put it on Mike Evans. Brian Burns needs to get the franchise tag. Okay, the Carolina Panthers and him have been going at it on whether they were going to stick together and get a long-term deal worked out, or if he was going to get traded, because if I remember last offseason, there were rumors how the Carolina Panthers were shopping him around. And the Rams wanted to get him for 2 first-round picks, but they didn't want to pull the trigger. And it seems like they really do want to get a long-term deal with Brian Burns worked out, but he's asking for $30 million reportedly. And Carolina doesn't seem like they're willing to give him $30 million a year. It seems like they want to give him $25 to $28 million, somewhere around that range. And Brian Burns is a really good pass rusher. He's a B-tier pass rusher. But he's not an A-tier pass rusher like a Myles Garrett or a TJ Watt, where he's good enough where he can win 2-3 games for you. So I think for the Carolina Panthers, when you got a guy like him, you can't allow him to just walk for free. You got to at least try to get him locked up long term, or try to trade him and get something in return for him. You missed a very golden opportunity when the Rams came at you with those 2 first-round picks. You can find solid pass rushers in the draft. You should have been gotten rid of Brian Burns. And at this point, you kind of are in a situation where your back is against the wall because you didn't want to trade him and you missed your opportunity to get him locked up before he had the big season he just had this season. He had 12.5 sacks in 2022. And this season, he had 8 sacks. So he's on his way to becoming a elite tier pass rusher. So now his value has gone up based on what he did last season. So if you weren't going to give this dude what he was asking for, you should have already traded him because you knew what he was wanting. So the Carolina Panthers, they have no choice but to franchise tag him because you missed your opportunity to get some value for him. And now your back is against the wall because you waited too long to make a decision of to extend him last offseason or to get rid of him. And now with the production that he's had based on the last 2 years, he kind of has a point to get $30 million a year. Because if he definitely is available in free agency, there are plenty of teams that will give him maybe more than $30 million a year. So you got to franchise tag him, try to get some value for him or sign him long term. And you might not have a choice but to just give him $30 million a year if that's what he's asking for, if you want to keep him around. Jalen Johnson is coming off the best season of his career. He was a second-team All-Pro. He only gave up 2 touchdowns this season. He had 10 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, which was a career high for him. And there were rumors around the trade deadline this past season that he was getting shopped around. The Steelers, the 49ers, and a bunch of other teams had interest in trading for him, but the Bears didn't trade him away. And I'm guessing that means that they do want to give him a long-term extension, and they got the cap space to do so. I don't know why they haven't done so already. And he's a big part of Matt Eberflus' defense. And if Matt Eberflus is going to be able to save his job next season, you definitely need to make sure that you keep this guy around. It just makes a lot of sense for them to put the tag on him. They're going to pay him what he's asking for. He deserves top-end money. And they got the cap space to do so. So it'll be really weird and surprising if they don't pay Jalen Johnson. I mean, they got no reason why they shouldn't. And they got the means to do so. Does it piss you off how much you pay for your monthly phone bill? Why are you getting frustrated when our partner Mint Mobile has plans as low as $15 a month that give you unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network? Stop getting frustrated with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and go to trymintmobile.com/JTSports and description and pin comment down below to get access to premium wireless for only $15 a month. That's only $15 a month. Switching to Mint is easy. It only takes 15 minutes to do. If you're pissed off with how much you pay for your monthly phone bill, switch to Mint Mobile today and go to trymintmobile.com/JTSports in description and pin comment down below to get premium wireless for only $15 a month. Stop getting upset with how much you spend on your monthly phone bill and switch to Mint Mobile today. So Jalen Johnson is going to get the franchise tag. Kirk Cousins is coming off a really concerning injury that kept him out for the remainder of last season. And with his age, being a really big question because you don't know if he's going to be the same quarterback that he was prior to that injury. And the Minnesota Vikings, you don't know if you're going to be able to trade up for one of the top quarterbacks in this year's draft. Therefore, you need to keep Kirk Cousins around. Even with him coming off that injury, I don't think he'll be bad to the point where he won't be starter quality anymore. You'll at least be able to stay around and win a few games, maybe make a playoff push or two with him for the next 2-3 years. But you definitely have to start looking at the future. But right now, there's no better options. You got to franchise tag Kirk Cousins if you're not going to give him a long-term deal, and there's every reason why you shouldn't give him a long-term deal. So you might as well just franchise tag him for this season, let him play on the tag, try to get a 2-year deal worked out. Maybe you just keep franchise tagging him for the next 2 years while you draft the quarterback and you just let him develop, and you just keep putting the franchise tag on Kirk Cousins because you can do it for the next 4 years, because Washington did it to Kirk Cousins before, so he's not new to this. He understands how it goes, and I don't think it would be anything wrong with him playing on the franchise tag because you become one of the highest paid at your position for that season while you're on it. So for Minnesota, franchise tagging Kirk Cousins is a must, and Justin Jefferson, you're trying to get him locked up long term, and right now he's making a bunch of demands, and I don't know if they're true or not, but allegedly he's saying that he wants Kirk Cousins back because he wants to know what the quarterback situation is going to look like. So you kind of don't have a choice but to put the tag on Kirk Cousins. You got money to make it happen, and even if you don't want to give him a fully guaranteed deal for the next 2-3 years, there's a way that you can find a way to keep him around while you find a younger option that can develop behind him. But you can't let this dude walk away, even without his injury. There's still teams that would get Kirk Cousins. Leonard Williams, the Seattle Seahawks traded for him from the New York Giants, and he's coming off a really good year. He is one of the better, more underrated interior defensive linemen in the league. And against the Dallas Cowboys Thursday night, he was absolutely destroying them. He was a one-man wrecking crew. Seattle, they probably want to get him secured for the next 3-4 years. He'll probably retire a Seattle Seahawk because once this contract ends, wherever he goes, if it's in Seattle or elsewhere, he'll probably retire because I do expect that he will decline. But right now, he still is a premium player despite his age, and he may be one of those players where he's like Cam Hayward. He gets better as he ages. He's still really good against the run. He's really formidable against the pass. Hell, some seasons he's really effective getting after the quarterback. Some seasons, not so much. But in terms of looking for a run defender that's really good at penetrating and getting behind the line of scrimmage and creating a lot of havoc, Leonard Williams is your guy. You got Mike McDonald, that's your new head coach. He was able to elevate Jadeveon Clowney to a level that we haven't seen him play at in the last 4 or 5 years. Imagine what he could do with Leonard Williams. So, Seattle, I expect them to franchise tag him. Christian Wilkins is coming off the best season of his NFL career. He went from becoming a really elite run stopper to becoming not just that, but really good at getting after the quarterback. And it's really hard to find interior defensive linemen that can give you 9 sacks in the season. Now, we don't know if he's consistently going to be able to give you 9 sacks plus a year, but realistically, he'll probably be around 6 or 7, 8 at the most. And at this point, he probably deserves to be paid like one of the highest paid defensive linemen in the National Football League. You might not have to give him Aaron Donald money, but you're definitely going to have to give him a pretty hefty sum. And it might take you a while to figure some of that stuff out because your cap situation right now isn't ideal, but you got to find a way to put that franchise tag on your boy Christian Wilkins. He is your best player on defense. He's better than Jalen Ramsey. And the national media doesn't really talk about this dude like that, but There's nothing that he can't do. He is an incredible athlete. He is a really good leader in the locker room. I was watching Hard Knocks not too long ago, and the team really rallies behind Christian Wilkins and his high motor and the energy that he puts out on the field every single play. He's like the heart and soul of that defense. I don't see how they don't franchise tag him. I would be really blowed if they were to let him walk away, because that would be devastating to not just that team, but that locker room also. L'Jarius Sneed for the Kansas City Chiefs is coming off a stellar performance during this playoff run that they just had, winning their second consecutive Super Bowl. And you may say that Chris Jones deserves to get the franchise tag, but he's 30 plus years old now. He's probably going to start regressing, and he's not going to regress immediately because he's a Hall of Fame caliber player. Hall of Fame caliber players regress at a slower rate, but it's just that you got to prioritize your younger players. L'Jarius Sneed, you drafted him in the middle portion of the 2020 NFL draft. He's your best cover corner right now. He's one of the better cornerbacks in the league. And you got to find a way to lock him up long term because he's a staple of that defense. You can't allow him to walk away. L'Jarius Sneed, with how young he is compared to Chris Jones and the production that you're getting out of him, you got to give him the tag over Chris Jones. It's just how it goes. Now, Chris Jones at the Super Bowl celebration said that he wanted to come back. We'll see if it happens. So if that is true, then I figure they'll make it work. But L'Jarius Sneed, regardless, has to get the tag, because if he hits free agency, I want my Steelers to go after him. Everybody's going to be willing to pay him anything that he wants. So Kansas City has to franchise tag him. Even if Chris Jones was just talking and he really does plan on chasing the money in free agency, you still got to let him walk in favor of L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed is just way younger than him, and you just have so many years left out of him of elite play compared to Chris Jones, who you give him this deal and he's going to regress. T. Higgins, obviously, is not going to go anywhere. All right, he's coming off a down season, but that's due to injuries. But he still is one of the better receivers in the league. He's a number one receiver on most teams. And Cincinnati wants to make sure that they can keep that duo with him, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow alive. So I don't see him not getting the franchise tag. I don't know when they're going to give him that big time contract extension, but right now, until they can figure that out, you got to put the franchise tag on T. Higgins. I don't see how he does hit free agency. Many people have been speculating that he's going to be available in free agency. Every free agency prediction video that I watch, I see him going to some team, either the Carolina Panthers or the Houston Texans in free agency, but Cincinnati has cap space. And they got enough money to keep T. Higgins and Jamar Chase around for Joe Burrow. You may not be able to have it all defensively, but you got some young players that are stepping up defensively. And as long as you're able to continue to draft well like you have the last couple of years, you should be fine on that end of the ball. But right now, you got to make sure that you can keep Joe Burrow's number 2 option at Cincy. So T. Higgins, I expect him to get the franchise tag. Justin Madubuike was a second-team All-Pro this year. He had 13 sacks. Without a doubt, Baltimore is going to franchise tag him. Their cap situation isn't great. They're going to have to free some money up. They're going to have to work some things. But Justin Madubuike, no way he's going to leave Baltimore. You get a defensive tackle that gives you 13 sacks in the season. Do you know how rare that is? Not a lot of D tackles can even give you 8 sacks consistently year to year. So when you get somebody like Justin Madubuike, not only do you have to pay him, but you got to pay him like the Aaron Donalds of the world. You know, this is just one season, but this is 13 sacks. And 9 times out of 10, he still is going to be giving you 10 sacks a season. He's up there. You know, maybe not Aaron Donald, but you got to give him something like that. This is somebody that's probably going to command like maybe 90 million over the next 3-4 years. That's a lot of money for an interior defensive lineman. But you get somebody like him that's giving you 13 sacks in the season as a defensive tackle? Come on, man. You got to make sure that you can keep him around. Josh Allen is the best draft pick that the Jaguars have made in the last couple of seasons. And did you know that he could be the first Jaguars player since nearly a decade to actually get an extension after being drafted by Jacksonville? Like, Jacksonville does not keep their first round picks around. Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Fournette, those guys didn't get extensions after their rookie deals were up. As a matter of fact, they either got cut or traded before they even ended, and they got extensions elsewhere. Josh Allen had 17 and a half sacks this season. Without a doubt, you got to pay this man. And you know what? Jacksonville really kicked themselves in the foot because they had the opportunity to get Josh Allen on a discount last offseason. If they would have paid the man last offseason, they wouldn't have to pay him the amount that they're going to have to pay him this offseason. This offseason, you probably got to pay him 30 plus. You do. You got to pay him $30 million a year. Last offseason, you probably could have got him for maybe 27 or 26 million a year. But since you played around and you dragged it out and you let him play this season, now he's about to make you pay in your wallet. And this is the upside of players who don't decide to sit out during the season and actually play and continue to perform and overachieve. Josh Allen has the right to become one of the highest paid pass rushers in the league. I mean, based on what he did last season, 17 and a half sacks, he's a 2-time Pro Bowler. The Jaguars got to pay the man like a top-end pass rusher. And, he's probably going to break the bank, but you got to get it done. And that probably isn't going to get done anytime soon because you got to put the tag on them. Right now, it doesn't seem like you're in an ideal situation with what's going on with Calvin Ridley. Are you going to pay him? Are you going to let him walk? Are you going to give up that draft pick to the Atlanta Falcons? What you going to do? So right now, you got to put Josh Allen on the back burner, but he's one of those players that if you're a Jags fan, they're going to pay him. There's no way they're not going to pay Josh Allen. They're going to pay him. So this is it for my 2024 NFL franchise tag predictions, the players that I believe that are going to get the franchise tag this offseason. Let me know some players that I missed, some players that you agree with, some that you disagree with down in the comment section down below.